I'd call the meeting of the Board of Game back to order. It's 8:34 a.m. This morning we'll be addressing proposals. Go ahead, Stosh.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt Proposal 172, clarify the legal use of highway vehicles, snow machines, and off-road vehicles in the Dalton Highway Corridor Management Area DHCMA for hunting and trapping, clarify the use of firearms and transport of fur bearers and trapping bait when trapping in the DHCMA.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, for the record, my name is Glenn Stout. I'm the Galena area biologist, and I'll present Proposal 172. The department's recommendation on revising the Dalton Highway Corridor proposal is withdraw. This is a department proposal. However, based on yesterday's discussions, we prepared record copy RC 58, and it has some alternate language for your consideration. Basically, the summary of the RC is just to remove Section C, which is the prohibited transportation aspect of it. It keeps the Dalton Highway Corridor Management Area regulation in place, but it just removes that area where we have all the road prohibition problems. So that's pretty much all I have for that presentation. You have the RC in front of you.
Thank you. Discussion from board members. And the original proposal, this would be an amendment to the original proposal.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the original proposal was basically revision with no specific language, but it was an introduction to allow for that discussion of what other options we had.
Okay, so this would be specific language for revising the corridor management area. Discussion, Al.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so you had some added language, and fur bearers may be taken by trapping. I guess if you're using a snow machine and you go according to the statute, the only way you could trap within the corridor is if you started on the outside of the corridor and were crossing the corridor to go to the other side. So that where you entered the corridor and where you left the corridor, that doesn't parallel the highway, you could trap. So that doesn't kind of, we had one person from the public come in and say he was having difficulty, accessing his trap line from the highway, which is in statute says you can't start or finish within the corridor. So were you thinking something else than the new language?
Through the chair, yeah, I think the statute would still apply. Obviously, that's still going to require that transportation with the snow machine or the activity of snow machining is affected. But as far as a transportation issue for the trapper, that no longer becomes an issue with the regulation. That's essentially out of the mix. The activities and the troopers would be the ones to speak to whether or not stopping along the way to check a trap under that statute would be an issue. They would be the ones to speak to that.
Right, Al.
So my limited knowledge on law in Alaska is if it doesn't restrict it, you can do it.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, I was going to let that go for a little bit, but I think I'd like to try to help things. By eliminating, what this section tried to do was to incorporate all of the variety of statutes and regulations that are out there that are pretty complex, that Glenn talked about yesterday. And one of the issues that is happening now is that this section has not kept up with all of those changes. So by eliminating this, you still have no motorized vehicles allowed under statute 1942-10, except to cross all the way across the 10-mile corridor. Or in 2017, the statute was amended, you can access a homestead site outside of the corridor, not inside, only outside. That statute is still in place, we're not touching that, but that change is not reflected in this new one. So what this would do is, what we have in place now is that licensed highway vehicles may be used only on certain roads. We have a new Department of Public Safety statute that says that licensed all-purpose vehicles that meet those requirements in the new regulation can be used on any road that it has a posted speed limit of less than 45 miles an hour. So we don't need to identify roads in here unless you want to specifically restrict it to certain roads, but this would open it up and avoid some of the problems that we heard about yesterday that the troopers are not enforcing because it's just not reasonable under the circumstances for all of those roads. By removing this, aircraft and boats continue to be used. It doesn't change anything that's already restricted. It doesn't add any new restrictions. It just eliminates language that might be confusing and hasn't been kept up to date. The use of a snow machine under a NILCA, though, I do want to mention, is still allowed for federally qualified users engaged in federally qualified subsistence activities on federal public lands only, which excludes state navigable waters. And I hope that, I'm trying to make it helpful here.
Thank you, Al.
No, I understood that perfectly. I just didn't, I want to know, would the public think when they see this that says, you know, fur bearers may be taken by trapping, that, you know, they're going to potentially think they can just start and stop within the corridor with their trapping efforts with the snow machine?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member Brett, we actually had a pretty good discussion this morning about that statement for trapping. You know, that we've essentially, by removing Section C, the management corridor, management area, wording is important, I think, it goes away. But we've decided to keep it on the books. So if we were to repeal it, as a previous proposal said, it would still mean you could hunt with archery or a falcon. But we're gonna leave the management area in there for two reasons. To make that explicit, to help make it clear for, so people don't have to go look for a statute and understand that they can't use a firearm. And then the attempt in leaving the statement about fur bear trapping being legal, we were actually trying to make that clear. I understand exactly, you know, I understand what you're saying, but we were trying to make it clear for people that you can still trap, you know, and, but that said, we also had discussions this morning that language could be removed. And it would just be it would just be something the public would ask, and we'd have to, you know, be able to explain it, so.
Yeah. Go ahead, Al.
I think, you know, with my familiarity with the road and, you know, being in my backyard, and I don't think anybody was under the impression they couldn't trap. There's plenty of road trappers on the Hall Road, all the way from the Yukon River to the closed area. It was always, people get confused when they can and can't use a snow machine is more important. Which I didn't see an attempt of trying to put, you know, you've used some other language that's in AS 19 in the regulation. Would it be advantageous to use, you know, that snow machine statute portion in the regulation? Because I remember you asking, how does a person know to go look in AS 19, you know, the Hall Road statute, when it's not in this book?
Through the chair, Member Brett, I agree 100%. But we're trying to make it easier, and so, I mean, I understand the snow machine part, and that's the purview of the board. It is a statute. And we can't, I mean, we're not going to list every statutory issue in the management area. And it's not our statute. It's, you know.
Right. If I could, Al, just as a matter of procedure to make sure that everyone's clear, the proposal's been moved. RC 58 should probably be moved, just to make it clear that that's what we're talking about on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we replace or use the language in RC 58 as substitute language for proposal 172.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, the discussion is on this language, and we can go ahead. Before you say more, I was looking at this, and fur bearers may be taken by trapping. Just as a matter of construction and looking at how things are normally written, when you're prohibiting hunting and then you're closed it to hunting with exceptions on hunting, but then you put trapping in that same sentence, it's really hard to read it as normal, because trapping isn't hunting, and we do them separate, and the other regulations make trapping legal. So I don't know that I'd like that to be in there, but that's if someone feels it's necessary, but that's for discussion purposes. Go ahead, Al.
So maybe instead of, reiterating statute language in a regulation, maybe it would be nice to put the actual statute in there with some verbiage instead of something about snow machine, here's the statute that covers it.
I hope you're speaking to the board, but, because it's ours now, not the department's on that, but I sure don't want to put other statutes into this and make it even more complicated for people to look at. But I don't know about other board members or how they feel about having even referring to the trapping in a sentence that prohibits hunting. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. I find it interesting that we spell out airplane, aircraft, and boats may be used, but yet we have a special one to exclude the use of a snow machine starting in the corridor. I just question why, if that boat's able to use that waterway, why isn't that snow machine able to use that waterway in the wintertime to get outside the corridor?
And I think that question is appropriately put to the legislators who passed the statute that prohibits the use of that snow machine. Because that's not our statute. It's not Fish and Game statute. It's a statute that is separate, and that's the confusion here, is that most of the prohibitions in this area are not Fish and Game regulation or Fish and Game statute. Go ahead, Al.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to put one thing on the record that maybe headquarters can use, or if they potentially want to, talk to the legislatures about statute issues that we struggle with. So the James Dalton Highway Corridor, section 19.40.0110 is a declaration of policy. You don't find these very often in statutes, but the legislature at the time did it in letter B, small letter B. The legislature said, it's in the sense of the legislature that the construction of the highway will not impair the natural wilderness adjacent to the highway and will not unreasonably interfere with subsistence hunting, fishing, trapping, and gathering. Yet, we have many instances where this statute and our regulations interfere with subsistence activities. Just for the record.
Yeah, but if we could go back to the discussion on the proposal before us, which is simply to remove the Board of Game regulation, which restricted motor vehicles in certain areas here, and not try to rewrite or be concerned about the other things at this point. We're concerned about them, but we have no power, authority, or anything to do anything about them. And the real question is, are you comfortable with this language that came from the department? And do you think this accomplishes what you wanted to accomplish to the best that we can? as a board. Go ahead, Al.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think, all other issues aside that I brought up, I can support this amended language. I think it gets us where we're going. I think, people will be able to transport and move about the corridor without being in violation of our current regulations.
Additional discussion on the proposal before us. Go ahead, Lynn.
I agree, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with, Member Barrett. I can support and I mean, even though it may not be correctly put in there and stuff, I still kind of like and fur bearers may be taken by trapping. But I think it's a start. I mean, I think this is gonna be a long process to clean this thing up. So it's just a start to at least the local people moving around, other people moving around from the airport back to the Dalton Highway, at least they can be doing it legally. Thank you.
Thank you, Stash. Yeah. Okay, you're just listening. Okay, Orville.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of favor the RC as well, RC 58, but I was wondering if the troopers could answer the question on redundancy, that there was two regulations, two parts of that regulation that contradicted itself. I know Al pointed it out to me.
So both of those will be removed with adopting this new language? Is that what your question was, Mr. Hennigan? Yeah.
Additional discussion. I would say that I tend to support this language. The concerns that we've heard about ruining the bow season, additional hunters in the area, this and that, this will have no negative effect on those issues. It simply makes current practices by people who live in the area and who transit the area legal. It removes a regulation that made it technically illegal to engage in activities which people generally engage with almost on a daily basis a part of the year. So, additional discussion?
Call the question.
Question's been called.
The board has heard no concerns from the public regarding cost to private persons if this regulation is adopted.
Christie, would you pull a board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Final action on proposal 172A, which was
As found in RC 58.
RC 58, thank you. Going to begin with Member Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Cooney.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Mr. Keough.
Yes.
Mr. Huntington.
Yes.
Mr. Fletcher.
Yes.
Chairman Burnett.
Yes.
That proposal carries as amended, 7-0.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt proposal 22. Determine customary and traditional uses of the Nushagak Peninsula Caribou Herd and Game Management Units 19A Alpha and 17C Charlie.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. See, we have a new face at the front table. Thank you. Did you say? You may go ahead.
That's good.
Mr. Chair, small technical difficulty, obviously.
Yeah, I can see that. So if you're listening in, we're just waiting for a computer program to properly load. Carolyn, are you ready? Okay. We're missing Stosh, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since there's nobody introduced me, I guess I'll do it myself. And have my colleague from Wildlife. For the record, my name is Caroline Brown. I'm the Statewide Subsistence Research Director, and I'm here in Fairbanks. Proposal 22 before you is, just as a reminder, is a proposal that you dealt with in January at the Wasilla meeting regarding the customary and traditional uses of the Nushagak Peninsula caribou herd. At that time, our staff took the board through the customary and traditional use worksheet for the caribou herd, but the board chose to take no action at that time because they wanted to hear more from the ACs regarding that. So this proposal, we're here before you again for this proposal. If you would like to refer to the actual presentation for the customary and traditional worksheet, it can be found in RC5 tab 15 together with the actual worksheet. And this slide in front of you right now is RC55. And this is the slide that updates the AC positions on this proposal. While you're looking for that, unless the board would like me to take you through the customary and traditional worksheet again, which I can if you would like, or answer any questions about it, I am here to present the information from the ACs, which are after the January meeting, both Nushagak and Togiak ACs did meet, did talk about this proposal, and both supported. And I can take any questions.
Go ahead, Orville.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. The other ACs in adjacent areas met too, and did they have any feelings one way or another on this? Like Central Kuskokwim and other ones?
Through the chair, Member Huntington, I'm actually going to rely on board support to help me with that question.
I just need a minute to check the matrix if we have it on there.
Through the board, Member Huntington, according to the matrix in RC 40, there are no, there were comments previously submitted by Anchorage and Fairbanks in AC 4.
Thank you, Caroline. And I'm not aware of any other ACs commenting on it. Mr. Huntington.
Additional board questions. Go ahead, Al.
Is 17 land status, is that state? Or 17A and C all federal?
Through the chair, Member Barrett, I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I can find it out.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Ryan.
through the chair, Member Barrett, there's a large amount of state land in Unit 17. There is some federal land, but there's pretty significant tracts of state land there.
Yeah, there is a land status slide in Proposal 269, which is the one on the hunt, which we're going to come to after. So Caroline, could you remind the board what the recommendation of the department was on C&T status and ANS for this area?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the determination of a customary and traditional use determination is up to the board. We don't typically provide a recommendation, but it is clear from the information that was presented to you in January that there is a long history of customary and traditional use by area residents of this herd. So, and then in the discussion, excuse me, in the discussion by the advisory committees, they also supported this based on that.
Okay, so we have two thresholds. One, is there customary and traditional use? And two, the ANS. And is there an ANS that would, for the area or for the game management unit for caribou already?
Mr. Chair, this is Caroline Brown. The board, if the board makes a positive CNT finding, they can then choose to determine an ANS. However, I believe is the Nushagak AC did feel that they would rather see more information. They would rather delay creating an ANS in order to be able to collect more data to provide to the board in order to make a more appropriate ANS.
Okay, thank you. And so we could do that at a regional meeting in the future if we were to take this action.
Mr. Chair, yes, and that would be appropriate because it always provides a more robust opportunity for public input.
And we will have some history, additional history of hunting in this area. So the proposal before us is to just determine that there is or is not a customary and traditional use for this herd. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Caroline, did we already go through each one of these criteria, these 8, and on record?
Through the chair, Member Huntington, yes, I believe that you did at your January meeting.
Yeah, we did at the January meeting, as you will recall, but we put this off simply for the AC, opportunity for the ACs to comment, and the comments are both, so, Al.
Yeah, so, thank you, Mr. Chairman, so I'm in support of it. I trust the ACs out there, they're a valuable part of this process, and I'll be voting in favor of positive and traditional findings on this.
Okay, any additional comments? If not, I think we might be ready for the question.
Call the question.
Question's been called on proposal 22.
The board has heard no concerns of the public regarding costs of private persons if this regulation is adopted.
Thank you. Christie, would you poll the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Final action on proposal 22. Mr. Cooney?
Yes.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Mr. Keough?
Yes.
Mr. Huntington? Yes. Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Chairman Burnett?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
That proposal carries 7-0.
Thank you, Caroline. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt proposal 269, create a tiered hunt structure and open a hunt for the Unimac Island caribou herd.
Second.
Okay, 269 has been moved and seconded. Is the department ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have Dave Crowley, the King Salmon Area Biologist online, ready to present 269.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I cannot share my screen while the previous screen is being shared.
Okay, we'll just take a short technical break here.
Let me try that again.
Well, we see you better now.
Okay.
Okay, your screen's up here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Proposal 269 would open a tiered structured hunt for caribou on Unimak Island in Unit 10. This is a department proposal, and we support opening a limited registration hunt on the island. This is a map of Unimak Island on the left, which is Unit 10. The SAP, the Southern Alaska Peninsula Caribou Herd, is in Unit 9D in the center part of your map there. You'll notice on Unimak Island, Falls Pass is the only community. And then there's several communities along Unit 9D that have daily air service, 3 or 4 communities that have regular air service in Unit 9D. So I don't expect much participation in a caribou hunt in Unit 10 from Unit 9D because it would require a flight to the island or a ocean seas boat voyage, basically. So we're looking at a really remote caribou herd in Unit 10. One exception might be if Unit 9D residents are commercial fishing down around Unimak Island. Most caribou on the island are in the west and northwest portion of the island, so far from Falls Pass for the most part. There's some exceptions, they'll trickle east, but for the most part, the majority of the herd is to the west. Falls Pass residents can hop over to the Alaska Peninsula. Just about where the words Falls Pass are on my map is the very tip of the peninsula. It's mountainous, but there are a lot of caribou in those mountains. So that's only a half mile or a mile